Change the clock yet, so the clerk can't reach it apparently, so the CAO will have to do it. Attendance will show that Mark is not here yet. I think he is coming apparently, but he's not here yet, and he will arrive when he arrives, if he does arrive. The agenda has been circulated. Before I ask for the motion to approve it, there's just one. First of all, there's the addendum that we all have, but there's a change that I'm going to make, and that is 12A, Councillor Miller's item, is a companion to one of the delegations, so I'm going to request that 12A be moved up in the agenda to be discussed during the deliberation and the disposition of the first delegation. And other than that, I don't have any additions or deletions. Are there any additions from the floor? Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one announcement under other business.
Okay, don't let me forget that. So you will now be 12A. Anything else? Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to be 12B if I could. I have something under other business. Thank you.
Okay, we'll list that as something.
Just double checking with you, does, under 8, the adjusted addendum, part 4 needs to be deferred to staff. Does that need to be mentioned now? Or?
Yes, let's deal with that now. On the addendum, there is a recommendation from the Community Improvement Plan Committee report. Recommendation number 4, apparently there's a technical reason that cannot be approved by this committee. It has to be approved through a process. So we're going to, at the appropriate time, Councillor McAlpine will ask that be deferred. And that's the reason why, because technically it would not be in order to be placed before us at this time. And we'll deal with that at the time when I get to that. And I'll be looking at you for the resolution to defer it. Anything else? Any deletions? None? Okay, now we can approve the agenda as amended. Brian and John, all those in favor? Motion's carried unanimously. And that takes us to the opportunity to declare a pecuniary interest, if you have any. Seeing none, delegations. The first delegation this evening is Steve Ferrant talking about cannabis odor concerns. And I'm going to ask Steve to come to the podium and perhaps introduce himself. And as he's coming forward, I'll just remind everyone that the delegations have 10 minutes to make the presentations. There's no clapping, cheering, jeering, or anything else from the audience at this time. It's a formal committee meeting, so act accordingly, and I don't think there will be any trouble. And if there is, we'll zero in on you at that time. And that has given Stephen the opportunity to come forward, and I turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Councillor Miller for inviting me. We've been corresponding for, probably 6 weeks or so on this particular issue. In your briefing, in your package, you would have received what I call a briefing note. And hopefully you've had a chance to peruse it a little bit. I'm just going to touch on some of these things, some of my concerns, and the basic concern, of course, is cannabis odor, which has been increasing, and to the point where it's for some periods it's been like a daily occurrence. It was today. I was outside for a few minutes around noon, and definitely could smell the cannabis odor. And it's a windy day, so it varies a little bit. Because I live about 300 meters from the greenhouses that are producing cannabis. We've been aware for several years that my neighbors at 79 Brant County Highway 2 have had contracts, and I believe they've had renewal of those contracts over, I think, around the last 5 years to produce cannabis products. In the first, I'd say, 4 years, perhaps a bit more, we didn't notice any particular odor from there. no other issues as far as we were concerned. But in the fall, we began to notice every day, and people would come to our home and go, Steve, I smell cannabis here. Yeah, we've got a greenhouse, just right over there, you can see it. And so on. It's a skunk-like smell if you've never smelled it. It's not pleasant unless you're a fan of skunks. And it's been almost a constant. Now, we did have a couple of weeks in February where we couldn't smell it, so maybe something to do with their production cycles and so on. I just want to note, as I have here, that we're not anti-cannabis. We're not trying to, eliminate it. We did support the decriminalization, and there are we're not the only ones. Although we have some of our land we use for cash crops, but we have about 40 homes within half a kilometer, if you're counting the ones that are on the Oxford County side of Highway 2. We certainly anticipated agricultural smells. We're not very far from the Stewart Farm, as you know, a fairly large dairy production, and also hog producing just off on concession 2, not very far from us. So that and of course the delights of liquid manure being spread is is something we expect, but it only happens a few times a year. So we have done a little bit of research. I must say, if you just Google cannabis odor and control and so on, you will see that there are facilities that and equipment that's available for growers, air processing equipment, filtering scrubbers, this kind of stuff that can be put on to the facilities to reduce the odors. I did speak with Mr. Greg Bergeron on email, and he just did advise me, as I've said here, that though Health Canada currently regulates the odor, they don't seem to have taken much of an interest. In fact, in a couple of attempts to contact them, I've only got like a form letter back, thank you for your blah, 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 kind of stuff. So without any addressing my concerns at all. Mr. Bergeron also said that the County of Brant, you folks have under bylaw enforcement, you do have, of course, requirements for licensing marijuana production, cannabis production. However, I gather that there's not much in there about, if anything, regarding odor control. So I suspect this is just going to use the pun, grow more and more, not only in the County of Brant, but really around the whole country. So what I'm really asking for is that, not that you shut the facility down, nor revoke their license or anything like that, but probably under their current license, they're operating, I gather, within their license agreement. But at some point in time, they will probably ask for a renewal. And there will be other facilities, as there are already, I understand, that are planning production in Brant County, that you as councillors, leaders in our county, relook at your bylaws, at our bylaws, to make odor control part of the application and bylaw enforcement bylaws. Thank you. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ferrand. Committee members, this is the opportunity to ask questions of clarification. It's not the opportunity to debate the issue. It's not the opportunity to discuss the issue. It's just the opportunity to question if there's anything you don't understand about the presentation. Mr. Howes.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the delegation. Just because I'm not familiar with the facility, it's a growing facility. It's a greenhouse where the marijuana is grown indoors, and it's also you say it's a processing facility. What do you know? What kind of processing is happening?
Good question, Councillor Howes. I've never been in the facility, so I can't swear to what they do there, except it's a couple of large greenhouses. If any of you are familiar with the firm that used to use the greenhouses, Sedum, they grew plants for rooftop, I'm trying to think of the, John, you know. Green roofs, thank you, David, yes. And at some point, I believe it was sold and converted for use for growing marijuana. So I don't know, exactly what, whether they bag it there and so on. I assume that they harvest it there. They certainly grow it. And then I assume that they harvest it, and where it goes from there, I'm not sure how much of the before it gets to the consumer that they actually are involved with. Yeah.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So you stated that, until, fall time, you really hadn't smelled anything, and I think you answered the question here, but I was going to say, like, have you contacted them to see if they've changed anything in their production, or you haven't?
I haven't spoken to, haven't attempted to contact them. I did meet with a fellow out on Highway 2, and quite frankly, I did distribute some information like this to my neighbors, and with the suggestion that if they were concerned, that they should contact Councillor Chambers or Councillor Miller or Greg Bergeron or Health Canada and so on. I understand only one person has unfortunately has contacted someone, but this fellow who had a Sedum jacket on, and I assume he was still working there, he stopped me and asked me what I was doing, and I said, well, I told him what I was doing, and I said, if I have concerns, and and so on. It was a pleasant conversation. It wasn't confrontational anyway. But I haven't gone to speak to them. It's not like it's my neighbor, so to speak. It's a business next door. So.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. My apologies for being a few minutes late as well. It says here in your document, facilities in other jurisdictions have made this a requirement for cannabis production. I'm wondering if you could let us know which jurisdictions you're referring to. So
I did a really quick Google, and I passed on a link to David, and it said North Bay. And then I realized, David, after I had sent it to you, sorry if I'm out of line addressing Councillor Miller, that it's North Bay, someplace in the U.S. But anyway, they highlighted in this particular article, they've highlighted the equipment that they're using for odor control at a cannabis production facility. That was just the first one I came across. I was in a bit of a hurry to see what was out there, but I suspect there are, odor control has in other industries has been a major, there's been major technological improvements, over the last 30 years in odor control for all kinds of other industries too. So.
Joan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You state in your brief that the supervisor for bylaw enforcement has referred you to the Ontario Ministry of Environment and Climate Change to see if they may have some ability to abate the odors. Have you actually done that?
I have not, but from my correspondence with Councillor Miller and with Mr. Bergeron, Mr. Bergeron did inform me that he's made those kinds of inquiries and hasn't had much satisfaction. I can't remember exactly the word he used, but he hasn't had a lot of satisfaction in the responses. In other words, they don't seem to be taking it very seriously.
Okay.
I have not, sorry,
Yeah.
I have not contacted.
Oh, that's fine. And the other question was, they advise you that Health Canada regulates odors from a production facility. Do you know if anybody has contacted them? because they
I-
got their
I-
license from
I
that
have
point.
contacted them via email, and I've had only a form letter response, just saying, thank you for your letter.
And no
That's it.
action.
And not address my concern or any action at all. And I've done that twice. Now, I haven't called them, but I could do that and pester them. But I haven't had any satisfactory response from Health Canada at all.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I don't think there's any more questions, Steve. As I alluded to previously, we are going to discuss Councillor Miller's information as well, and that will occur after the delegations are concluded, so
Okay,
stick around.
Can I stay for that portion?
You certainly can.
Thank you. Thank you, folks.
And we have a second delegation. Shelley Gracie is here from the Paris BIA, and I'm asking her to come forward to introduce herself and just remind you to pull that microphone down and speak
There's
into
no
it.
footstool for me?
Steve is quite a bit taller than what you are. so
Just a
that's
little,
good.
thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you for having me. I am Shelley Gracie, and I'm here today on behalf of the Paris BIA. I think that there were some maps and papers handed out on our behalf, so hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at that, but you might want to refer to it as I go through our request. I just wanted to start out by saying that we have been informed that there is a it's called wayfinding. I don't know, I guess it's something that's in the works, and it is going to sort of help the downtown core as far as we all know that Paris has become very much a tourist attraction, and the wayfinding, our understanding is to help visitors to our town know which way to go, where the stores are, the shops, because when you're not from here, you're not familiar. And we very much appreciate that. But today what we're asking for is that something be done in the form of signage for the local shops that are in the downtown core to let people know when they're coming into town where there are shops. What we're finding, and this is coming from these store owners themselves, because obviously their business is being affected and they watch the patterns that happen with visitors to town or people that are shopping in the downtown. And so what's coming back is that visitors tend to do basically a big square down Grand River, and then they turn and they basically come across the walkway and they go back around. What we are asking for is there are some shops. I think that if you can, I'm just going to scroll through here. If you can get to exhibit number 1, it shows a picture. You can kind of see a picture of the Cobblestone Commons. And what we're finding is that people basically stop right there and they look, and there's not a very good eye line. So when you try to look beyond the Commons towards going straight down north Grand River, which would be north, you really don't see that there's other shops there. So a couple of the shops that you might be familiar with to kind of help you out envisioning this, Debbie's Basic Black, and there is a newer health food shop, the Hollow Willow. So those two shop owners specifically have said that they watch and people really don't even know they're there. A lot of times they try to put out the A-frame type signs, things like that to get visitors' attention, but in most cases they find that people just stop and continue across the walkway going towards Wincy Mills. So what we're asking for in exhibit number 1 is if there could be, you can see in the sign there's some plant hangers, which that's exactly what they are. We put those plant hangers up this year at Christmas, and if there could be something in the form of signage there, even if it's just something, I don't know if there's a universal signal for shopping, like a little shopping bag, something along those lines, just so that people know that there are shops beyond that point. That would be effective. So we're asking for that. And then number 2, if you scroll to number 2, you'll see that's Grand River Street beyond William Street. So again, we're finding that visitors are stopping at the corner of Grand River and William, crossing the street, down William, and then coming back up Grand River, as opposed to crossing towards, so the shops that you guys will be familiar with would be Cobblestone's Restaurant, and there are some shops beyond that that seem to be missing these visitors. Number 3, again, it shows the corner of Grand River towards the Arlington. The Arlington obviously is a big draw, and a lot of people know that that's there, and they notice it, but anything beyond that, the eye line is not very good. So there's a business beyond Paris Dental Center, Baby Be Home, and the owner of that shop is experiencing the exact same thing. So if we could have some sort of signage there that would just say shopping this way, kind of thing. And then number 4 shows Mechanic Street, and again, we sort of spoke about that earlier, but same idea, it's just basically going towards the Home Hardware, towards Wincy Mills, but there's some shops along there that, same thing. And so we're just asking if you could consider some sort of temporary signage before the wayfinding strategy is put into place. That would be amazing, and the shop owners would be forever grateful. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Shelley.
You're welcome.
Again, the same routine, questions of clarification. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I'm glad you made the presentation, because when I was reading it initially, I mistakenly thought you were hoping for more signs to point people towards downtown Paris.
Right.
That's not your issue at all.
No.
Your issue is people are in downtown Paris.
Correct.
And they're standing at an intersection or a corner, and they think if they carry on in a certain direction, they're going to find a real estate office or an insurance office or a place to buy a new carburetor.
That's
And-
right.
And they don't think they're going to find another cute shop.
Exactly.
If they carry on that block.
That's right.
So and now, so my question
Sure.
is, has the BIA itself experimented with any kind of signage you do great work downtown.
Thank you.
The Christmas
Thank you.
decorations were fabulous.
Thank you.
Has the BIA itself, excuse me, experimented with anything along this line?
Not really. I mean, I think that we're sort of at the mercy of the county understanding what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do. And to be honest, we thought this was the best sort of method to get something started. A lot of the shop owners, like I mentioned, have the waffle boards, but I was told also that some of them, so there's one shop beyond Grand River, they're called Paris 1850, just before you go over the bridge. They're closing. And they used to be over by the arena, right, the old arena, and didn't get enough traffic, so they moved to that spot, still no traffic. And she put a waffle board out, and she said that she was told she wasn't allowed to have that, just to try and make people understand that it was there. And I mean, I don't know what else shop owners can do, so.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thanks.
Thank you.
Shelley. And at this time, let's deal with this. Okay. John is on the floor right now. Let's deal with the Paris BIA issue now, and then we'll allow David to present and deal with the other issue. How do you wish to deal with the BIA's request? Mark?
I'd like to put a motion to, I guess, with the BIA, examine potential sign designs that are congruent to our CIP and our wayfinding strategy, and see what we can do to move that up. I don't know if I'm wording it very well, but maybe I can get some help from the chair on that.
The clerk is madly typing away here. I think the intent is clear. Do I have a seconder? John, and now I'm going to ask the clerk to see what she come up with that.
That the County of Brant, in cooperation with the Paris BIA, review signage options to enhance shopping signage in advance of the wayfinding strategy.
Sounds a lot better than what you said, but I think it's the intent is the same way. So the motion is moved and seconded. Speaking to the motion, Steve?
Just the one element that Mark mentioned that I don't think made it into the written motion was just in conjunction with the CIP guidelines.
And that's a friendly amendment.
Yeah, as a friendly amendment, please.
And now that we have a friendly amendment to the motion, I'm going to call the question. If there's no other comments or question, all those in favor? Motion is carried unanimously, and that puts it in motion. Now, the first delegation, which will be the last discussed delegation, is regarding cannabis odor concerns. David, I'm assuming that you will have in your presentation a resolution that will deal with the delegation to some extent?
Yes,
Okay, you have the floor.
yeah, I won't belabor it, Mr. Chair, because I thought Mr. Frank did a good job in his written and verbal presentations. So what I'd like to do is move a motion now, if you're amicable to that, and then I'd like to speak to it very briefly if I get a seconder, if we can get on the floor. And that's simply to refer the whole matter of cannabis odors complaints to staff for a report to come back at the April CDC. And I'm seeking a seconder, and I'll speak to that motion.
Mayor David has seconded it, and you can speak to it.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, everybody knows cannabis is a growing concern. There's so many puns, it's ridiculous. We want to nip it in the bud and all that stuff, but I'll stop there. But as Mr. Frank correctly pointed out, it's a growing problem, we know there's other grow-ups coming, but we're not the first municipality to face this. I don't know if other councillors have had complaints in their ward. I'd like to find that out as well. But other municipalities have been dealing with this for months. And I called the mayor of Pelham. Pelham is a small municipality, lower tier, out in the Niagara Peninsula. If you Google Pelham Municipality, go to their website, the first thing that comes up, the first thing on their website is a form to fill out if you have a cannabis complaint. That's how bad it is there. So if you get a chance, he's a very friendly fella, Marv Junkin. He'll talk your ear off. He'll tell you everything they've gone through. But what they've done in Pelham is they've put an interim control bylaw in for a year, for 12 months. And basically they're doing the exact same as Niagara on the Lake. And they've done that because they've struck a cannabis committee to find out how they should be dealing with these cannabis complaints as far as odor, and he also said as far as lights go. I thought that was interesting as well. Leamington County will not issue any building permits until the owner or the applicant can guarantee that there's no odor. The mayor of Pelham also said that the MOE, and I know Councillor Gatwood, you asked that question, has not been helpful. And these are his words, and if I offend anybody at senior levels of government, I apologize. But these are his exact words. He says, MOE has not been helpful, and Health Canada has been even less helpful. And I think our speaker kind of alluded to that. So there's a bunch of things, and I've already talked to Robin a little bit about this, but there's a bunch of things we can do, like you say, to get out in front of this. For example, require a site plan for any new greenhouse coming along. I guess we can do that. We could ask for a deposit to guarantee that there's no odors and so forth and so forth. So I won't get into it. I'll wait. Hopefully, we'll get a staff report next month. But there's a bunch of things we can and should be doing, and we should be unified in how we approach this.
Okay, the motion is requesting a staff report on the issue for next month. Speaking to the motion, John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I'm just curious, is this in general the odors? Because what I would like to see here, and as the delegate said, it's only been since fall time. So I would like somebody, or can we get somebody to approach this business to see if they've changed anything? Because that would be the interesting part to me. If it was, you know, I'm not sure how many years this has been in production there, but a few anyway. And if it's just in the last, 3 or 4 months, 3, 4 or 5 months that the odors have been there, You know, is it as simple, and I don't know, is it as simple as a filter or something like that? I don't know, but I would look for, now whether, I don't know whether bylaw could go there and discuss that with them, I'm not sure, but I would like somebody to approach that business to say, you know, has something changed? And have that as part of the report. I agree with where David's going with this, but I think we need to look at it in general, which is I think where the motion's going, but I think we need to also look at this one specifically, this one brought to our attention by the delegate.
Joan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And perhaps I think this one is converted greenhouses that originally were used for something else and not originally intended to grow cannabis, and maybe they're not as well equipped as a specific build for cannabis that's brand new with all the state-of-the-art filtering systems, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe we need to consider that in our staff report, how we're going to deal with existing buildings being converted into growing operations, because I think we have an obligation to help protect the residents that live in the communities near these operations. They were there first, the residents, and they deserve some cooperation. And I'm really disappointed in the Ministry of Environment and Climate Control, or Climate Change. I think they should be stepping up to the plate.
Are there any other comments to the resolution? Mark?
Just because it was brought up, myself and Steve, we haven't received any smell complaints from the production facility in our ward, but the production facility in our ward's an indoor, more of like a factory grow center, so it's likely different than the greenhouse farming type.
Again, David, you can sum up and then I'll call the question.
Yeah, just to address what Councillor Pearson, Councillor Gatward brought up, you're absolutely correct. There's ways of dealing with new facilities coming on board, and then our bylaw kind of need some more tools to deal with existing ones. And as Councillor Chambers is aware, Greg Bergeron, our bylaw, he has been dealing with it. He's tried to bring in the MOE, and they've taken, I think, at least over 30 days just to respond. So he is trying to deal with it. I have made inquiries to the owner. So far, the only people I've talked to so far is the security, because I had the exact same questions. Does it have something to do with the production cycle? But at the end of the day, like I say, we do need a unified approach as a council in dealing with these complaints.
Okay, having heard that, I'm prepared to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. And that deals with the delegations, and I would thank both presenters for their presentations. We'll move on to the adoption of minutes from the previous meeting. Do I have a seconder? John, are there any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Motion's carried unanimously. There are no business arising from the minutes. That takes us to the consent agenda. And in the consent agenda, there are recommendations to be approved and items to be received. Would someone be comfortable in moving that the recommendations therein be approved and the consent items to be received? Brian moves it, seconded by John. Does anyone wish anything removed from the consent items to be voted on separately? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The consent items are adopted. We are now at committee reports, and there is a committee report on the addendum, and this is where I'm looking at John. Proceed.
So I had the opportunity to talk to Allison just before the meeting, and, okay. I talked to Allison just before the meeting, and part 4, I think we need to take out because we can't pass it as written, and it needs to be deferred to staff.
So the motion would be then recommendation number 4 be referred back to staff. Do I have a seconder? Steve? And you've heard the reasons why. All those in favor? Motion's carried. So that deals with recommendation number 4. Now, does someone feel comfortable in moving recommendations 1, 2, and 3? John? Yes. Seconder? Steve? Comments, John?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, just a quick one. Absolutely, I'm in favor of all this, but is there somewhere we could get a tally as to how much we've put into the sign, like for the facades and such? I'm just wondering if if we could just get a total to date of how much we've put in and how much is left that we've set aside.
And that, I don't think anybody would have that on the top of their head, but we will ask staff to provide that information to the committee, and perhaps a suggestion as we move forward, perhaps part of the report may be
Have that on, yeah.
reconciliation of where we're at.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. That concludes the committee reports, and now we're on to staff reports. And the first 9A is corporate services, and there is a recommendation and a report from General Manager Hewitt. Would someone feel comfortable moving that recommendation? John and Steve. John Bell. Okay, comments or questions to the recommendation? Steve first.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're looking for 3 members to be appointed to serve on the Joint City-County Committee to examine service sharing. I would like to nominate.
Okay, before we get to that, how I intend to, not only in this recommendation, but in a couple of the other recommendations, there are appointments required. I'm going to hold that to the end of the meeting and have a recommendation or a resolution to appoint Tom, Dick, and Harry to this, and Joe to this, and Joe to that. So we'll deal with that, the nominations or whatever, at that particular time. So just hang on to that. Okay, if that makes sense. John, to the motion?
Speaking to the motion, I'm not supporting it. I don't feel that this is needed. County of Brant can go it alone. We don't need the city of Brantford. We don't need a joint services committee. We've had this in previous councils. This went nowhere. If you do this, you're going to end up finding out that the city will take control of that joint service between the county and the city. This County of Brant is in good shape. We do not need it, and I will not support it.
Any other comments? John and then Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking to the motion, what I'd like to understand here, and I'm assuming it's the same, but like, would the city have 3 members as well?
I believe so.
Is it? Thank you.
Steve?
Just a question to Councillor Wheat's point. Can I do that? No, can't do that either.
You can rhetorically ask a question, but we're not going to get back and forth between councilors. That is understood? Mark?
Through you, Mr. Chair, maybe to staff. In the terms of reference as we see them, is there a potential out clause or a folding or termination of the Joint Services Committee that we can pull the let me off this ride handle?
And the CAO is going to respond to that.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I didn't include that in these draft terms of reference, but I think it goes without saying that council at any time can exit from this. It's voluntary between the 2 municipalities, so.
Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too agree with Councillor Weed. I see no need for this, and I think it's just a waste of time. I'll make my point.
Any other comments? Joan?
Well, while we like to cooperate with our neighbors, there is one service that I think, once the city builds a new shelter, we could try and partner with them and use their services for dog and animal control. Currently, we use Hillside.
I'm just going to interrupt you there. We're not talking about individuals. This is to set up the committee to
Services,
talk
I-
about that. So
yeah.
if you can
But-
just hang on to that, if there's a committee, they'll deal with that. But the resolution is not dealing with the individual items, it's dealing with the committee.
But as far as a waste of time, other than animal control, there is a number of shared services already with the city. I wish we could have a list of those services because we share with public works items, we share with recreation, and I don't know if they're still trying to chip away at our emergency services, and I think this council's made it clear in the past, we're not interested in sharing emergency services such as policing and fire. So I have mixed feelings about this, and that's all I'll say for now.
Did I see someone else a first time?
Well, not first time.
Okay, then I'm going to make a comment, and then I'll, if there's anybody else wish to make a second comment, we'll do that. I'm not really in favor of this recommendation as it stands. I would much sooner strike a committee of this council to look at shared services with our neighbors, including the city of Brantford. But if you look at the map, we are neighbors with the city of Hamilton, the region of Waterloo, North Dumfries Township, Township of Norwich, Oxford County, Norfolk County, Haldimand County, and there are all kinds of different things that we could be looking at with them. As a matter of fact, I would submit that a lot of the county has more in common, and I'm looking at the rural part of the county, with the county of Norfolk, or the county of Oxford, than it does with the city of Brantford. So I would much sooner strike a shared services committee of this council to look at sharing services with all our neighbors, rather than with just the city of Brantford. And that's my comment. So I'll go with John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you, and you were kind of going where I was going to go on this, in the sense that I think what we should do is we should meet as our own council to understand what we feel would be beneficial to us to enter into any shared agreement of service prior to getting any, let's work on it by ourselves with no influence from anybody to understand where we want to go, and at that point in time, expand out, whether it be to our outside surroundings or our inside city, right?
I've got David and then Mark.
Thank you. Really quick, speaking to actually what you said, Mr. Chair, Oxford does have an organic composting facility that they have offered that we could use if we ever do go the green bin route. They've also made entreaties to the county as far as transportation goes. So as far as what you go, I don't support the report as written, and but if we are investigating other possibilities with other municipalities, I will support that.
Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm weary about this, to put it bluntly and delicately. Much like Councillor Wheat was saying, I think there's an element here too where it's very easy for a neighbor that is several times the size of us to treat us like the junior partner whenever we enter into these joint services. And I've seen evidence of that historically and more recently in terms of attitude, and it makes me second guess. I wonder if, as Councillor Pierce was saying, we should not only meet about this as a council to decide our goals, but I feel as though this council, looking at a report we received from our CAO as well about similar issues, maybe we need to meet and have some strategic planning as a council, including potential shared services and other things, to look at where we want to go in the next 3 years more broadly, and have this be part of a bigger session on that.
John? Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wholeheartedly agree with the idea that we need to do strategic planning, because to take this one item in isolation, I wouldn't know where to put it on a list of priorities without seeing all the other priorities laid out aside of it. So I would not support actually following this particular motion.
Okay, everyone has had the opportunity to speak to the motion that I believe wants to speak the motion, and I'm at the point now where I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, the motion is defeated. There will be correspondence going to the city in a diplomatic fashion that we're not opposed to sharing services, but we are looking at other avenues to look at shared services. And I think the diplomacy will be in play. We don't want to give the impression that we don't want to share services with the city, but I think we're going in a different direction, and that's the intent of that defeating the motion. So, the general manager has an update, I believe. And as she's coming to the microphone, I would just suggest to the CAO, you heard some of the discussion, and I think there may be some action coming from the staff to the committee to look at what we just talked about. Proceed.
So good evening, through you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to give you an update on the development charge background study, which is well underway. Staff have been meeting, and we have set up 3 public consultation meetings. So there is 1 in April and 2 in May, and we plan to bring the draft background study to council in June. We've also had our kickoff meeting with the architectural firm KNYMH regarding the Burford renos, and the plan is to bring a report to council in the fall prior to the 2020 budget cycle. And that's all I have.
Okay, are there any questions to the general manager? Mark?
I've been hearing some rumblings from other municipalities that they're looking at trying to find ways to include affordable housing in their developmental charges. Is that going to be part of the report and review?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in all honesty, I can't give you an answer on that. I can go back and find out and get back to you.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no other questions. Yes, I do. Joan, sorry. The blind
Thank you.
spots are on the corners.
I'll start waving.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to our general manager. Do you have dates for the April public meetings for the development charges?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the first date is scheduled for April 26th.
April 26th.
I don't have the time, but I can get you that. And it will be at the BSC. And it's regarding growth and service standards.
We'll get notice of that
Yes.
closer. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, General Manager Hewitt.
Thank you.
We'll move on to operations, and the general manager isn't here, but his replacement is Mike Tout, the Director of Roads.
Good evening, through you, Mr. Chair. There's a lot of recruitment going on within operations right now. We're experiencing higher than normal retirement as well. There was a position or 2 that was in the decision packages, so there will be some recruitment that's ongoing over the next couple of months. Rest Acres Road is scheduled to be tendered in April. It's definitely a 2-year project, and that will include Powerline Road west of Rest Acres, Arlington Parkway, and King Edward Street. So it's going to be a fairly large project that's going to take some coordination to pull together. Grand River Street North, the next PIC has not yet been scheduled, but it'll likely be last week of April or early May. Paris Master Servicing Plan update is progressing, and a presentation to April CDC is being considered. As well, you will see starting with tomorrow's Public Works Committee, where staff are gearing up for a full construction season. We have reports coming tomorrow with the anticipation that as soon as the last of the snow and ice is gone, we'll start into construction activity. Our programs are getting to the size that if we don't hit the ground immediately in the season, we have a hard time getting all the work done. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions to the Director of Roads? John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mike, I just want to this is a bizarre question, but are you planning on staying to the end of the meeting? Because the reason I ask that is he's he's kind of in my other business question, and it was actually going to be kind of directed towards him, and then I found he was here, so I'm just, if you are going to be here to the end of the meeting, that's great. If not, I was going to ask if I could move it up.
Yeah, no, I'll be here.
I think you've been asked to stay to the end of the meeting.
I will
Thank
be
you.
here.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? John first and then David.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mike. Two questions about Rest Acres Road. 2 years project has become a 3-year project since the budget time? Because at budget time, it was a 2-year project.
Sorry, a 2-year project
I
for
thought I
Rest
heard you
Acres. It will take 2 years to complete the construction.
I thought you said it would be a 3-year project. If I misheard you, then that's great.
No,
I'm
it's a
happy.
2-year
Yeah, that's good.
construction.
Okay, the second thing, and related to that, is you talked about the coordination required. The communication to our residents is going to be critical. You saw what happened with one roundabout and the volume of traffic. I mean, I'm talking about digital traffic now, suggestions, complaints, lack of understanding. Can we set about making a communication program that will keep people informed before we start and as we go through it? Because I'm thinking of a huge, great big board somewhere at the beginning of the Rest Acres Road coming off the 403 and at the other end. It says, this is coming, this is going to last 2 years, stand by, because it's going to be difficult, and you better just grit your teeth and live with it, because that's how it's going to be.
In the difficulty that it was experienced in the construction of the roundabout, at the time, we were actually short a couple key senior staff people, so we had staff trying to move these projects forward. So those positions have now been filled, and we're stepping back, and we're bringing a little bit more of the fullness of the project together. So I can assure you that those mistakes will not be repeated.
I'd be happy to see us invest a reasonable amount of money in communicating what's going on. It really will pay us back handsomely.
David?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Tout. You get a flooded road on a Monday, somebody calls me, no problem, I call Public Works. If it's a Saturday or Sunday or a night, we call the police dispatch. Is that how it works?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you would still call Public Works. It is, our phones are redirected to fire dispatch, which in essence is located in the OPP office.
I did mean fire dispatch.
Yeah.
And how do you determine, at that point, I guess somebody would go out, and if it's sufficiently high, you would put up the barricades. Do you have a criteria? It's got to be X number of inches deep, or how do you determine that? Because I drove through some pretty big puddles on the weekend. So.
It's not entirely depth. Sometimes the flow will cause more concern, but keep in mind, we have staff working really 24/7 this time of year. During the days on the weekend, we have an on-call superintendent who actually will go out and investigate. Evenings, we have night patrol staff, so we have staff in place. So we would sooner become aware of it, go out and investigate, and we'll err on the side of caution for sure.
Okay, yeah, I did see a couple up on my way here. So, okay, thank you, Mike.
Any final questions? Thanks, Mike. And you are going to be sticking around. Then we'll move on to the Community and Protective Services General Manager's update. I'm told that there is no update, but the General Manager's here if there are any questions. And I don't see any. So I'll move on to Development Services. Same thing. The General Manager has informed me that he has no update, but is here to answer questions if there are any. And there are not any. Takes us to Strategic Investments. And there's a resolution there. Does someone feel comfortable in moving that? Moved by John, seconded by Brian. Are there any questions or comments to the recommendation? Fairly straightforward. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And the General Manager does have an update and is here to answer questions as well.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just a few quick things. I wanted to mention that the Downtown Paris Master Plan, we are having the final open house on April the 4th. You will be getting invites, but I wanted to reiterate that it is happening, and it'll be at the Paris Fairgrounds again from 5 to 8. Many of you came to the 2021 Ontario 55 Plus Games announcement, and thank you for those who attended and for all the support we got. Staff did go to the 2019 Games in Huntsville for at least a portion of them, just to get some lessons learned and meet with the organizers there, and I understand it went very well. This past weekend, some of you may have been there, we hosted the Under-18 Ontario Curling Championship here at the Paris Curling Club. We provided social media and participant welcome support for that event. And staff also recently attended the annual conference, Festivals and Events Ontario in London. And you may have seen also that 2 events that happen here in the county were recognized as among the top 100, being Paris Fair and the St. George Apple Fest. Staff serviced 3 filming inquiries in February, so definitely above normal for a 1-month period. You may have seen some of those happening around the county. The job posting has gone out for graphic and communication specialist, which will be replacing Jacqueline Wilson, who is leaving us at the end of this month. Yeah, and I don't have anything else.
Any questions? Joan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to Allison. At the last Economic Development Advisory Committee meeting, I was reading the minutes, and it was quite interesting when you talked about the Brant 403 Business Park being full, which we all know, and that there had been, I guess, inquiries or possible new builds in the property across the road. When will we hear more about that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you're talking about the lands directly across Rust Acres Road?
That's what was mentioned here.
So
For
that,
future development, and that servicing to the area will be completed in a time frame that's considered reasonable to process an application to build, confirming that the OPP station will be operational by 2020.
so the question came of what other lands or what would be large-scale development opportunities within the county, and whether we would be purchasing land for that purpose. So we had a discussion around that. I mentioned that there is an application by the owner of that land to come in, and we are talking about options of extending servicing across the road so that they can further the development, rather than us taking on the risk of purchasing that land if they're going to be at the table to be a willing partner. That's what the role the county is intending to play.
Oh, good, thank you. I wasn't aware that there was an application in. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, thanks, General Manager Newton. And we'll move on to the Office of the CAO, and there's a recommendation there. Does someone feel comfortable in moving that? Moved by Mark. Do I have a seconder? Steve? Questions or comments to the resolution? Mark?
So since this is the nominee appointee thing, we're going to do that
Yeah,
after?
I'm going to do that at the end, because there's another one
No question.
along the way. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And now we have the CAO's update, and I will do the nominations or whatever at the end of the session.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Earlier on the agenda, on the consent agenda, I had a fairly large report with all of the initiatives going on. I think that it's something I will endeavor to do on a quarterly basis. I think it's worth presenting those to council so you can keep up to speed with what we're doing, and it helps us to keep focused as well. We maintain a master project list, but sometimes it helps to just pull them all together and dig into them a bit. So February 14th, the acting Fire Chief Heyman and I went to the GRCA Flood Coordinators meeting. It's an annual meeting that they have for all municipal flood coordinators. It was a good meeting. They talked about the flooding event that went through Brantford last year and chatted just a bit about their process to update us, the municipality, on when there will be flooding. So it's always good to attend that meeting. I used to attend it in my GRCA days, and it was nice to get back to it. And it's good to know that they're on top of things, so as we move into flood season. The strategic plan was approved at the last CDC meeting and endorsed by council, and that plan is evolving nicely. And we'll have a memo probably in the next Friday file on further steps, and you'll start to see some events scheduled around that as per that plan. The last thing I wanted to mention, we heard a little bit about this, and I don't want to reopen the discussion about odors in the community from industry, but I have requested a meeting with senior MOE staff regarding TIMCO, which has been an ongoing challenge to this municipality. I will bring up this other matter as well, and it's just worth noting that that's something that's worth keeping in mind. The municipality, its tool bag through the Municipal Act does not include the ability to write bylaws around odors, so we have to go through other paths to address this, and that's why it is such a challenge for us to deal with industries that emit smells. The MOE usually has carriage of these, and their hammer is the environmental compliance approval process, but I think we're starting to see some areas that don't fall into that. So anyways, I just wanted to mention that we are on top of this. We'll continue to address these as they come forward. Staff will report on tonight's issue, but proactively, I've gotten requested a meeting with MOE later this month to talk to them about what they're doing on some of these files. So that's my report, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Any questions? John, and then Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Michael. Yeah, back in the stuff to receive there, thank you very much for that report. It really goes to show that we've got a lot of stuff going on. I'm wondering if we can somehow, I know this, the minutes are open to the public and stuff like that, but I'm wondering with a lot of the work we've done on our website lately, we're getting ourselves into a good spot with that. Is it possible that we could have like something on there that says, just exactly that, corporate initiatives underway? Because I think this information is very valuable for the public to know, because, and like I say, reading through that, it's like, everybody around this table really should know all of them, but then when we look at it, you go, wow, we got a lot of stuff on the go here. And I'm just wondering if we could build a spot within our website that, whether we want to call it initiatives or whether we want to call it who knows what. This is what, coming down the road or whatever. But I think information like this is very valuable, and I think it'd be fantastic to be on there. Again, we can't get it to everybody, but those that are coming to our site, and I'm thinking there's a lot more coming to our site now, this would be perfect. So I don't know how we go about that, but if we could, that'd be great.
And that'll be taken under advisement.
Easily done.
Mark?
I also really appreciated the list. I counted over 31 different initiatives or plans. And this is something that I highlighted in your report about staff are currently amending internal work plans to continue to balance these ongoing evolving initiatives. Caution council that if council wishes to undertake further special or anticipated initiatives in the short term, prioritization will be required. I've said this to a few council members privately and a few staff, but I do think, and I'm guilty of being part of the problem here, but I do think we need to slow down a little bit as a council and not asking for a report on every single thing that comes up rather quickly. One of the things, my question would be then, I discussed earlier an idea of having more of a strategic planning meeting for council, maybe and some senior staff as a whole. Would something like that help? Would it help staff, or would it be more work for staff? Because I think for us, it might help to not, we don't need to get everything done in quarter 1 and 2 of year 1 of a term. And I think we need to be a little more strategic about when we unleash some of these initiatives. So would that be helpful through you, Mr. Chair?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and so as part of the strategic plan process, there is a facilitated discussion with council, and we're actually, the clerk and I are going to probably schedule that shortly. And so I think that's the place where we can talk about what does this council want to achieve in the remainder of its 4-year term. That's really the place to do that. And I think I've picked a facilitator at this point. I'm going to chat with the mayor about it early next week, but he's going to write us a short proposal. He's done a bunch of work for a lot of municipalities, and I think it's going to be a great experience for us. So I think that that's probably already underway, and I agree with you, that's probably the exercise that we're going to achieve that vision for this council for the remainder of the 4-year term.
Okay, then thank you for your report and update, and we'll move on to communications. There are 2 items of communication, each requiring an action, but let's have a motion to receive the communications first, and then we can deal with them. Mayor David and Brian moves that the communications be received. All those in favor? Motion's carried. 10A, the SWIFT is asking for a member as well, and that'll be dealt with at the end. And the WIWWI is requesting a grant. How do you wish to deal with that request? David?
Well, I'll get it on the floor. I'll move the $1,000.
Do I have a seconder? Mark? Questions or comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried, and the Women's Institute will be advised accordingly, providing that it passes the test of council. Now, there are no matters referred by council. We've already dealt with the other business. Before we go in camera, let's deal with the appointments. I think we have to recommend 2 appointments, one being the person or the suggestion on the design steering team for the Health Hub. Would anyone like to serve on that committee?
Could I nominate John Bell?
Certainly. And I've seen he's shaking his head that he would like to. Is anyone else? David?
I'm going to nominate the mayor.
Mayor David, do you want to be considered? Okay, so we have 2 considered. Any more? Don't be shy. Joan?
Could not the mayor be considered ex officio, Mr. Chair? Because that way we always have one person there if somebody's away.
I will ask the CAO about that, and
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's designed to be an informal committee, a working group committee, so if this council wants to have the mayor and Councillor Bell sit on it, I have no objections to that.
okay. So far, so good. Anybody else wish to be considered for the member? The mayor is ex officio, he's in. Then a motion, we'll hang on to that. Let's deal with the SWIFT council member. Would someone like to sit on that particular board? John?
I don't wish to sit on it, but I would like to nominate Councillor Pearce, who I think has all the qualifications, and as a member of BME board, it fits quite nicely.
Are you able to be considered?
I was talking to John about this earlier. Depending on when the meetings are, I would absolutely like to be part of it, yeah.
Okay. Any other nominations or volunteers? First Brian and then Joan.
Can I nominate Councillor Miller?
It's a nomination. David, are you willing to be considered?
Yes, I watched this thing be born, and I'd like to see it through to its adulthood, so yes, I'd like to.
Anybody else wish to be considered or nominated? Okay, we have 2, and we only need 1.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Pearce indicated it depends when the meetings are. Through you to Councillor Miller, are you available for nighttime or daytime meetings?
Yeah, I mean,
Water, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Questions are relevant.
Yeah, it's up to the individuals to decide what they will do. And now this is how I propose to deal with it. If there are no other people want to be considered. I've written John and David. I'm going to draw a lot. I'm going to ask,
I don't think so.
rather than have an election, I'm going to ask the CAO to pull a card. It says John. Now, that is not finalized. It has to be finalized by resolution. If you didn't like that little card trick, now's the time to say so.
I didn't like the card trick at all.
Okay? Do you want a nomination and an election?
Yes, please.
Okay? Then what we'll do, I'm not going to be forceful on that. If that's the way you wish to do it, then I'm going to ask the clerk to prepare ballots.
Thank you.
John?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I could, even though my name was pulled out there, I didn't really like that card trick either, so.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just tried to
Yeah, no, I hear where you're going.
move it on.
No.
Then we'll have ballots, and in the meantime, let's have one motion to nominate, who was it? John Bell for the design steering team along with the mayor ex officio. A motion to that effect? Mark and John, all those in favor? Motion's carried, and we will have an election. It's either David or John. The Johns that are nominated.
I was going to give him this clean cup to put him in.
I didn't get one. And as the election is proceeding, we only have the in-camera item to deal with. And the next meeting is April 8th. Yes? Oh, yes, other business, the something, I forgot. The something is you, and then you have an announcement. First of all, the something that I don't know about.
No, it's just, and it's interesting that Mr. Tout is here this evening because I'm wondering what we can do to, I'm talking the top of Mile Hill. It was a lake the last week or so on the, I guess it's the east side. It, just when you turn the corner from Powerline Road onto Mile Hill, everything goes to the one side. I don't know if we can even just cut through that curb. I don't know, because like the whole, pretty much the intersection was a lake. And then it got cold and I saw one car go, so, you know, again, I don't know if we can even, because I know there's a drain on that side that comes underneath the road. There always used to be a little opening there and now there's not, and it just seems to kind of go down that way. So I was just going to ask if we could get information to Mike, but here he is.
Okay, we will refer that to the road committee, and they can deal with it
Excellent, thank you.
tomorrow.
Yep.
And Joan has an announcement.
Yes, I have the pleasure of letting everyone know that on March 23rd, Onondaga on the Grand, which is our little Onondaga Hall, they're having their third annual pancake breakfast. They serve real maple syrup, fruit, pancakes, sausages or bacon, and they have a nice bake sale. It's only $7 a ticket, and that's a Saturday. They have two sittings, 9 to 10:30 and 11 to 12:30. So there's a telephone number. If you want tickets, you can see me. And a former county employee is the chairman of that committee now, and she was very happy I was going to bring this forward tonight. So I hope we have some people that like pancakes. Thank you.
Okay, that having been announced, I have the results of the election, and I would ask for a resolution to confirm that David Miller is the representative nominated for the SWIFT Board representation. Moved by Brian, seconded by John. All those in favor? Motion's carried, and I'm going to demand that the clerk destroy the ballots. And I believe that takes us to the in-camera session. No, that's it. No other business. In-camera session, a motion to go in camera to discuss the issue on the agenda. Mayor David and David. All those in favor? Motion's carried. And my voice is just about shot, so I'm going to ask